There's no one in this room, I believe, well, maybe some of the people who were the oldest people, but there's virtually no one in this room who does not believe something very strongly today, who ultimately is going to realize that they were wrong. We all make mistakes, and we all have our beliefs challenged, and every once in a while we realize, oops, I thought that was right and it was wrong. And I think that it's a very important lesson. And it's one that I've learned over and over again. And it leads me to question. And it does make it more difficult to act sometimes. Because, you know, when you question, you sometimes wonder. So there's been a long evolution. And I'm not sure that that evolution is even done entirely. What I believe today, just to be clear, is that Julius Rosenberg was involved with a bunch of young people trying to help the Soviet Union defeat the Nazis. And my mother knew about it, but was not involved. I think she agreed with him, but she wasn't involved. And the government knew that Julius Rosenberg wasn't a master atomic spy. But they also knew that Julius Rosenberg was the recruiter. He was the one who organized his friends. And it was really a bunch of amateurs, a bunch of friends. They weren't professional spies. They weren't people who were paid to do this. They were political idealists who decided that they were going to do what they could to make the world a better place. And, you know, they made some mistakes, clearly. They believed that the Soviet Union was a workers' paradise and that all the things that they heard about Stalin were lies. And they weren't all lies. And so, but that's who they were, and that's the decisions they made. But the government knew that they weren't master atomic spies, but it wanted to make certain political points. And it wanted to coerce my father into giving up all the other people in the spy ring. And the way it did that was by arresting his wife and threatening her with the death penalty, and ultimately carrying those death penalty out when they refused to knuckle under. So the point is that, and this is hard to sometimes to grasp, that the government didn't ask my parents to tell the truth. The government wanted them to lie, to say they stole the secret of the atomic bomb, and these people helped us do it. Now that wasn't true. So my parents sitting in their prison cell and writing, "We're innocent." Well, there's an element of spin going on there. Yes, they were not guilty of what the government wanted them to say. And so they could honestly claim that. But that doesn't mean that my father was totally, completely innocent. Yeah.
Are there any attributes or characteristics of your parents you remember or you were told, other than this, we think of them in this one context, like they were your father, they were your mother, you looked at about who they were, and you see some of yourself or your children?
That's who they were as people. That's always been a great mystery to me. I have no memories really of living with them, other than this sort of vague feeling of happiness and warmth that could be a fantasy, that a myth of a golden age before everything went wrong. I have no idea for sure. From what I know of people who, there have been so many times when people have come up to me, not so much recently, but back in the 1970s and 80s, people came to me, "I knew your parents, they were wonderful people." And I would take them aside and say, "Well, what were they like?" And then I would discover that they didn't really know my parents. They met them at a union meeting or something, and they thought they were wonderful people. But I wanted to know what they were like personally. As far as I can tell, my father was a charismatic political thinker, that among his friends, He got a degree in electrical engineering, City College of New York. Among his friends were scientists and engineers and technicians, and he was not known for being a great scientist. He was known for being the political person. So the role of recruiter, of organizing others to engage in stuff, but not being the person who actually did it because he didn't have the technical knowledge. So I think he was a very personable, charismatic figure. My mother was a talented singer and actress. Her high school yearbook, little saying under it, you know, that is often done for high school students, it said, "Can she act and how?" She had such a good singing voice that she was pulled out of class to sing the national anthem at assemblies in her high school. When she was in freshman year and the seniors, juniors would have assemblies, they would bring her out of class. She graduated high school at the age of 15. But I don't really know, you know, what they were like as people. I was just too young. And my memories of them are visiting them in prison. And what can you find out about someone's personality from a prison visit? I don't think all that much. So I can't really answer that. Whether, you know, it's true that my mother had a bad back and I have a bad back. You know, so there's some physiological things. Personality, I don't know. Yeah, in front. And then you're first.
The way fun works, how actively it works to help these children use the how your brothers live in this nightmare and how you know, bullies in school that way the adults and these parents and this hard time. I think a lot of children come to school who have parents that probably know skies, that they in prison and something happens, bullied in school. Are there things that you're finding that helps these children perhaps not monetarily, but maybe with counseling or with places that you know where they can say, you know, what exactly?
Okay, that's a great question, and I don't think you're distracting. In fact, you're sort of bringing us back to the main theme of the evening. We do help with counseling. I mean, what we do is we provide counseling. In some cases, we help with school tuition for children who need to be in special schools. We provide cultural programs. You know, it may seem like, sometimes I mention things like we give piano lessons to kids. We pay for that. And that may seem trivial. But if you're a kid who's having trouble and you've got a talent, and your parents don't have the money for you to develop that talent, to provide a simple thing like paying so that you can explore that talent, that can act like a safe harbor for you. And that can be qualitatively important. The other thing we do that I think is most important, and it's key, it comes back to the whole community thing. The RFC sponsors what we call these gatherings. We bring the family, we have two kinds of gatherings, carried forward gatherings for college-age beneficiaries, and family gatherings for parents with children who are school-age. And what we do is we bring people together in order to show the most important lesson of all, that they are not alone, that there are other people in the same circumstances, that they can meet kindred spirits, that they can make connections with other people who have had similar experiences, so that they can gain strength from each other. Create a supportive community around them. Isolation and fear are the worst things, and you can break that. So that's the kind of thing that we do. And we do it for a relative few number of people. I mean, we're talking about several hundred kids a year. But that's what we have the resources to do. We give away about $350,000, $400,000 a year, so maybe it's $1,000, $1,500 a kid. That can pay for a certain amount of therapy, that can pay for a certain amount of cultural classes. We also have special funds so we can fly people into these gatherings that we hold. We just had one last August. That's the kind of thing we do. And the way people find out about us is mostly online. We have a very simple application form. We're sort of an anti-foundation foundation. And what I mean by that is that a lot of foundations oftentimes treat the people who apply for support as kind of like the enemy. You know, you have all these hoops you have to jump through to prove yourself worthy. Okay? What we try to do is we say, if you're in this situation, we want to figure out how we can help you. So we have a different kind of attitude. Rather than we see ourselves as holding the funds that we use in trust for these people, as opposed to holding these funds close to the vest and only giving them out to people who prove that they absolutely meet our criteria. And that means that every once in a while we get burned a little. But it's happened very rarely. And we've even had situations where people come to us and say, we're not going to apply to you anymore because our problems aren't as bad as they used to be and there are other people who need it more. Which is very satisfying to have people come to that conclusion. So, and then,
actually, you answered the question with that question.
okay, well, good. 2 for 1. That's great.
I just want to ask you, because from what you have told us after drawing the narrative, it looks like that the evidence available now about your parents is that they might both have been innocent, and especially your mother. Is there a possibility of asking the United States government for some kind of apology or something like that?
Yeah, I think that the evidence right now is that my father didn't do the thing he was actually executed for, that is, stealing the secret of the atomic bomb. But because the charge against him was conspiracy to commit espionage, he actually was guilty of conspiracy to commit espionage. He was over-sentenced for it. So I think that it would be very hard to get the courts to, with my father. But with my mother, I think that that would be, you know, that would be a very reasonable thing to go about doing. But you look at the federal court system and you look who occupies the federal bench, and I think that that is an unrealistic expectation of our current court system. That doesn't mean that that might not change, but it's also very, very difficult to get the courts to deal with a 60-year-old case. It just is. And, of course, there's the whole issue of the death penalty. The United States government has never admitted, not one single state, and not the federal government, has never admitted that it's wrongfully executed anyone. Never. And think that's another problem with capital punishment. It creates a situation where you can't admit you're wrong because of the consequences of admitting you're wrong. So all the appeals process becomes this incredible dance to affirm the fact that we weren't wrong, as opposed to giving people an opportunity to prove that you're wrong. It doesn't always work that way. And I don't want to be totally discouraging. I don't want to say it'll never happen. Never is a long time. The future has never ceased to surprise me. So anything could happen. But I don't see it given the current makeup of our federal court system. I'm going to take one more question, then I'm going to go back in the room, and anybody who wants to have me sign a book that they bought, or anybody wants to buy a book, that would be great. There aren't that many books, but I hope to get rid of them all because I don't want to lug them back on the plane.
My question is, throughout like your whole history of whatever, other people would have thought like would crack, like try to like turn to other stuff, like start committing crime or everything. What helped you stay on the path?
Well, I think the community of support. I think I have to thank Abel and Meeropol for doing a really good job, I hope. I think that my brother and I both turned out to be productive adults, and I think they deserve a lot of credit. But I think ultimately there's another aspect that's a little mysterious. You know, why is it that one person goes through an experience and it totally destroys them, or they react in a manner that is negative and destructive, and another person goes through an experience and they do all sorts of constructive things? You know, I like to use the example of this woman, Debbie Irwin, lived not too far from me in western Massachusetts. She was a young mother. She had a toddler. She and her husband went out with her toddler to get some milk at the local 7-Eleven. They got smashed by a drunk driver and both killed. She ended up starting Mothers Against Drunk Driving. That was her constructive revenge. She reacted in a positive way that probably made a real positive difference. That's what a kind of example. It's not only about espionage and politics. So why did she react that way and somebody else in that situation would have drunk themselves to death? I think ultimately it's mysterious. There's an element of mystery in how we react, in how our brains operate, and how we experience things. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think there's something good about that too. That there is some mystery. That it's not all logical and rational. I didn't used to think that way, but I think that way now. Well, thank you all for coming. I don't want to be rude, but I'm going to run back to that table. If anybody wants to talk, you can see me here.
The son of parents who were put to death for involvement in military espionage against the United States at the height of McCarthyism brought a message about activism to Huntington today.
Yeah, 13 News reporter Ben Nandy was there for a deep discussion about the importance of activism.
More people than expected came here to Marshall University to hear from Robert Meeropol, the younger son of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, who were executed in 1953 for conspiracy to commit espionage.
It was really a very bad time, but there was a community of support that rallied to our aid and helped us to survive.
In this talk, Meeropol is focusing on the Rosenberg Fund for Children that he started to help children of activists.
There are people who end up getting arrested. There are people who end up losing their jobs. You have these people, and if they're parents, then their children suffer.
PhD candidate Megan Bennett drove here from South Carolina to meet Meeropol, who was alienated for his family's connection to communism.
I think it has a valuable lesson for today's society. It's no longer solely political, it's now more religiously based.
Robert Meeropol mentioned the idea of constructive revenge. What does that even mean, constructive revenge? It means positively channeling the anger felt over unfair treatment or unjust policies. Occupy Wall Street, protests against the World Trade Organization, the gay rights movement.
The trick is to take that energy, to take that destructive impulse, and to transform it into something constructive for the benefit of others.
And sometimes in doing that, lives get disrupted. Meeropol knows all about that. That's why he started this foundation. Ben Nandy, 13 News, working for you.